to say that the big issues in this country as we head into the budget remain the absolutely dire cost of living and housing crisis. And we want to push back very hard against what is clearly a strategy now of the government to play down expectations to compensate people or to take action in the budget to address the cost of living and housing crisis that are crushing so many working families, the less well-off, pensioners and students. And we will be saying this budget has to see income and wage increases that at least match the level of inflation and the cost of living hikes that people are suffering, and that we see serious measures to control the cost of energy, to control rents, to put cap on mortgage interest hikes that are absolutely crucifying people at the moment. We will be saying that we need caps on energy prices, because energy prices are almost double the rest of Europe. We reject completely the excuses that this is to do with the war in Ukraine, when in fact in Ireland energy prices are about 90% higher than they are in the rest of Europe. That is because of rampant profiteering by the energy companies that the government refused to take action over. Similarly with the mortgage interest hikes, where people are being crucified while the banks are making enormous profits, and of course the failure to control rents and the cost of housing and accommodation, which is driving so many into housing misery. And critically, we will be saying that people need to get out on the streets on the Cost of Living Coalition demonstration this Saturday, because we think people power, large numbers on the streets before the budget, can actually force this government to do more to help protect people from the cost of living and housing crisis. The other thing I just want to mention briefly is the petition that was handed in by Equity, the union representing performers and actors and writers and directors this morning. I'm a member of the Budget Scrutiny Committee, and I asked that committee to investigate the treatment of actors, workers, performers and film crew, where nearly €100 million is given in money to film producers every year to produce films, but the people who actually do the work in those films are being forced to sign buyout contracts where they lose the rights to their royalties and residuals from their performances and their work in films. And similarly, crew in the film industry are forced to work on successive fixed term contracts but never gain any employment rights or recognition of their service. And our committee produced a report calling on the government to do right by our writers, actors, performers and film crew, and we've had no meaningful response. So we will be raising the equity petition, which was submitted to the government today, where the writers, the actors and performers are demanding an end to the use of these buyout contracts that people are being forced to sign by film producers who are getting huge amounts of public money every year.
Okay, so we have 7 days to go. We are campaigning for a budget for the millions, not the millionaires. We think people need real change, not spare change. And I will be challenging the Taoiseach on these issues later this afternoon. So I want to talk here about the young Irish gymnast, the controversy that came to light last week. And also add a few points to what I said last week about what was going on in the National Stadium last Tuesday night. So I understand that the World Gymnastics Championships are being held in Antwerp this week. The champion gymnast Simone Biles, who spoke out in support of the young black female gymnast who was treated so poorly here, is in attendance. I understand that the girl and her mother met Simone yesterday at the championships, and I understand that today they will be attending a special conference on safeguarding. I think that's organised by Gymnastics International. I want to say here that the national governing bodies of sports in this country must do two things now. Number one, I think they must insert equity, equality, integration and inclusion clauses into their constitutions. And I also think that equity, diversity and inclusion officers need to be appointed more or less immediately now by all the national governing bodies of the various sports. I think that Sports Ireland need to insist that this be done, and I think that state funding needs to be contingent on this being done, and I would be interested in hearing the views of the Minister responsible, Minister Catherine Martin, on these issues. So I raised last week here on the plinth that Christian Voice Ireland had the National Stadium booked last Tuesday night for a gathering to discuss the social, personal health and educational curriculum and the changes that are coming in relation to that in the schools. And I questioned whether some of the speakers at that event, what they stand for and what they were likely to say was in line with the inclusion and diversity policies of the Irish Amateur Boxing Association, who would have led out the stadium to this group. The IABA said in the wake of those comments that they would investigate. The Minister welcomed that. I think since the event has taken place that those concerns are more, not less. I think they've grown. I think the report in the journal.ie is a shocking report of what was said and what is reported to have gone on at that event. We had teachers, according to the journal.ie, being referred to as predators and groomers. We had the proposed syllabus being described as grooming for children. One of the organisers and speakers at the event, Pastor John Ahern, speaking at an event in the National Stadium 2 nights previously on the Sunday, I have a recording of this now which I'm willing to share, made a comparison between the education system here, including information about transgender issues, that was compared to the promotion of Nazi ideology in Germany in the 1930s. And I think that this underlines the importance of the investigation that's being carried out by the Irish Amateur Boxing Association, and it's an issue that I will be keeping a very close eye on in the days and the weeks to come.
Two quick points. One is we're very concerned to see the reports about the overrun in the health budget and the suggestion that the consequence for that will be quite severe in terms of talking about a recruitment freeze in the HSE, no extra investment to come into our health service, effectively with the overrun having to be made up in terms of the extra money that would have gone in the coming budget. The truth is that our health system is getting worse, not getting better. The waiting lists are lengthening. We've almost 1 million people now on public health waiting lists. We've had an increase in the number of people on those waiting lists significantly over the last 5 years, since supposedly you have cross-party agreement for sláinte care. And we still have just over half the average in terms of beds per capita compared to the EU average. That's the fundamental reason for the crisis in our health service, as well as the siphoning off of funds via the National Treatment Purchase Fund to private health outfits, and via the just inadequate public health system driving people into the private sector, where people like Larry Goodman are making very, very healthy profits from the underfunding of our public health system. So we want to speak in defence of our health service. We think we need to have an all-Ireland national health service, one tier, single, high quality health service, including proper investment in our mental health services, which continue to be extremely low, again, far beyond what should be the norm in terms of providing the health care for our young people and for our people generally that's needed. Second thing, just briefly, is to point out that the war on neutrality being waged by this government continues. The latest was seen over the summer, whereby it was revealed that, contrary to the promises of the government, that the training being provided by the Irish Defence Forces to Ukraine forces would be non-lethal. In fact, there is lethal training being provided in terms of rifle training. And yesterday we had the incredible spectacle of the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, on RTE radio, attempting to kind of square the circle of having promised non-lethal training only, then providing rifle training by attempting to say that somehow the rifle training that Irish soldiers are providing is non-lethal training. That's clearly nonsense. He should have the courage to come out and argue for what the government has actually decided, which is to provide lethal training for Ukrainian soldiers, which is very, very clearly a breach of the principle of neutrality, something that we'll be raising during the week. I'll also point out the hypocrisy of the Irish government, which is correct to oppose the brutal Russian invasion of Ukraine, to oppose the policies of ethnic cleansing being carried out in the areas that Russia now control. But yet last week we had a formal delegation flew over direct from Azerbaijan, welcomed in our parliament, when Azerbaijan is engaged in a campaign of ethnic cleansing which has been extremely successful in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, where 100,000 people out of a population of 120,000 have been forced to flee because they're ethnic Armenians. You have over 100 people having been killed, and yet again Micheál Martin was quoted yesterday as kind of not seeing what the problem is. The horrific, hypocritical double standards, where the Count Corla said, and I happened to be in the Dáil at the time, I didn't clap for the Azerbaijani delegation, said 100,000 welcomes, Céad Míle Fáilte. It's one welcome for every person of Armenian descent who has been forced to flee their homes because of the policy of Azerbaijan. It's absolutely scandalous and utterly hypocritical, and shows the double standards being adopted by the government.
In relation to budget increases, pension and social protection payments are actually being with the law.
Well, we will be saying that when it comes to social welfare or pension payments, that as an absolute minimum, they need to bring it up to about €300 a week, because anything less than that means you're leaving people on the basic pensions and social welfare payments in poverty. It would be absolutely unconscionable, with record budget surpluses, for the government not to address the question of people, hundreds of thousands of people living in poverty, whether they're on pensions, disability payments, or both our basic social welfare payments. We will also be saying there needs to be a cost of disability increase for those with disabilities that would at least bring them up to a level of about €350 a week. But as well as ensuring that we have increases in social welfare and pensions that bring people above the poverty line, we also think ordinary workers need pay increases and income increases that at least match the level of inflation and the cost of living hikes that people have been crushed with over the last 2 years.
The government are worried about narrowing of the tax base.
Okay.
Do you have proposals, or would you have proposals to sort of get some cash in or something from cash out?
Absolutely, and we'll be absolutely. Well, we think that, and indeed we'll be putting forward our budget submission at the end of this week. But in fact, People Before Profit are unique, I would say, in the Dáil, in arguing that while we need cost of living, pension and social welfare increases that match the level of inflation, that these things can be paid for by the introduction of things like a wealth tax on millionaires in this country, the introduction of things like financial transaction taxes, bringing up employers' PRSI to the average European level, and tax increases on those on the very, very highest earnings. So we, intend to ensure that ordinary working people and pensioners and the less well off are protected from the cost of living hikes by redistributing some of the huge growth in wealth and earnings that have been enjoyed by a small group at the top of Irish society.